Scheduling is one of the triple constraints within a project, and schedule, if it's managed incorrectly, if the project runs too long, or maybe the project completes too early for whatever circumstances, it could be a risk to the success of the project and the viability of the project. So it's quite important to manage schedule correctly. Now, the level of accuracy and detail required within CGI projects, that's already pre-agreed prior to the appointment of a project manager. So in that terms, it's quite easy for project managers within CGI to just take that information and develop a project management plan from that. The tolerances are standard all across CGI projects within this particular contract that I'm part of, and that's general sort of 10% for 10% tolerances, plus or minus 10%. That's factored in with various other factors like discounts that have been already applied from the business side to the client, and if there's anything that's if we deliver before the project estimated completion, then anything that's left over is provided as service credit to the supplier, to the client. Once we've highlighted the project activities that need to take place within the project, the project manager, along with the team and along with various sort of stakeholders that are relevant, identify the interdependencies and links between different activities. Whether the start of a certain activity also triggers a start of another activity, or whether the completion of an activity means that another activity can start. And because the projects that I've been a part of were quite large projects, their complexity level was quite high. So there were tens of different tasks running parallel to each other, with various different interdependencies and various different cross links, and this was all highlighted in a Gantt chart, in a work breakdown structure that was produced. We produced a Microsoft projects file identifying all the various different activities and organizing it in sort of order that those activities needed to be executed, and we highlighted the different linkages and different interdependencies by lines across the different activities. And it's quite clear once you see the evidence, the PDF version of that. You can clearly see that there are various different interdependencies, various different links, and the project activities are organized according to their natural order or chronological order. When the project activities are highlighted, estimates for resources and the cost of those resources are highlighted as well. This was done in this case by listing the sort of various resources that we had available, both human resources and virtual resources that we need, like virtual machines, things like that, and we estimated the time needed for each resource, and we also estimated the cost to the resource, which feeds into the finances section. A tool that we use within CGI, PRT, the project reporting tool that we use, it's more of a financial tool, but it also identifies the various sort of departures from a deadline, or sort of a deviation from what we initially planned, and that sort of highlights any anomalies that are present, and we use that PRT to sort of level out the different activities. So if we spend too much in one particular week, that means that the next consecutive week we should be ahead of schedule, and we sit down with the various stakeholders to have that meeting and to see whether if that really is the case, or whether something has gone wrong, or a risk was a factor within that overspend, or being behind schedule or being ahead of schedule, and we make informed decisions accordingly within those meetings when all the information is provided. The risks are identified at the earlier planning stage, once the project manager is involved, and we produce a risk register or a risk log, and we identify all the potential risks that could impact the triple constraints: the time, the cost, and the quality of the project, and that could be seen in the evidences section in the risk section of the evidences. Usually, in terms of contingencies, we factor in those contingencies within the activities that we put in to the MS Projects file. So each of the activities generally have, on average, around 7 to 10% of contingency time, and that factors in, perhaps a slow performance, because some of the resources maybe not be completely performing on 100%, sick days of staff members, and possibly downtime of any machinery that we've got, any computers, things like that. So we factor those into the activities generally. However, when we factor those in for more complex projects, because it's quite difficult to go through each and every single activity and assign a proper float or a proper contingency time additional to the activity time. It's a very time-consuming activity, so to save that time and to use that time productively, actually working on the deliverables, working on those objectives, we just incorporate that within the activity time. But for more simpler projects, you can see that when the activities aren't as many as the project that I was working on, you have the various contingency times highlighted external to the activities itself, and those are calculated by various expert opinions. The MS project file that we produce is used to monitor the progress in terms of scheduling, and we have regular meetings with the various stakeholders, with the various relevant stakeholders, to see and agree on the progress of the project. You can also see a metrics of scheduling from the evidences file for a particular project that we had, where there was a change of project managers. So the metrics had to be compiled. So we had to take that particular time to see the progress of the project, where the project was, and where we're going to go ahead with it. So to sort of replan that particular project, we had to sort of take those steps, and that was quite a good activity to sort of bluntly focus on, or to have a given period where we had time to just focus on the project planning side of it, and just to see, take in all the data and analyze the progress of the project, the actual output, and do various sort of different calculations and measurements for that. In terms of departure from schedule, when at times within the project when things weren't going as per schedules, they were identified and picked up by project managers, and at one point it was a case where you had to change project managers and bring somebody else in who had the expertise to manage that particular project. But you had various different occasions where things will be either ahead of schedule, or most times than not, they'll be behind schedule. and then the project manager would have to intervene and bring things back up to speed. This would require, a lot of reporting up to the project directors, the sort of the sponsor, also the clients, and the project manager would have to replan. The ultimate risk for the project was the project being made unviable. However, because of the various sort of tolerances in place, that wasn't the case. It was the case that the project was salvaged and brought back up to speed by the team and by the various sort of stakeholders. You can also see from the different versions of the work breakdown structure and the MS projects file that as the project went along, as the needs changed, or as the scheduling was deviated from, you can see that there was various different versions to account for different things, and also there was a different version that was sent to the clients that was relevant to the client's needs, and there was a separate version for the business which highlighted more detail than the client needed to know. The lessons that we learned from this project were fed into the lessons learned at the completion of the project, and any sort of lessons that we learned from it, any things that came across that we didn't account for at the beginning, any risks or any factors that affected the schedule were all recorded, and they were fed into the lessons learned log, and a copy of the lessons learned log can be found in the evidences section. Overall, evaluating the project, majority of the stuff that we processed was guidelines provided by the business, so the agreements that were already in place, that were agreed by consultants or sales teams or various sort of high-level management, and they were just passed down to the project manager, and and the team would have to manually process all of that and create a structure from that. All the resource, highlighting the different resources, estimating, and it was a very sort of manual process. What I could recommend to improve sort of scheduling would be to have perhaps some sort of templates, or because this project was not much different, it was quite similar to projects in the past. There could have been some guidelines from the business that were specific to the project, because it required developing and coding, things like that. The business would have enough statistics to provide project managers more sort of guidelines or to provide project managers with things that might pop up that they might not be accounted for. That might not have been accounted for at the beginning of the project. So creating those templates and creating those guidelines with facts and figures from the past would have, I think, helped a little bit more, because in this sort of scenario, my experience was that everything was quite manual and everything was done as we sort of progressed. For monitoring progress and managing change, in the business we have a system to manage the process, manage changes and to monitor progress. But again, it is quite sort of manual. So it's creating those reports manually, weekly or monthly, on a monthly basis, and to report that back to the sort of various relevant stakeholders. So I think that we as a company have access to resources, and especially technology, that can do that for us, and that can manage changes and do the number crunching for us and present us with the details in a much more sort of visual way, in a much more collaborative way. Using tools like Jira, using other project management or resource management tools that can really help the team to collaborate and work together, and also generate those reports automatically, rather than having to sit down with the different teams and sit down with the various experts on a weekly basis. However, that is something that I think is starting to be rolled out into various teams within CGI.